Hi, everyone. This is Faye from Faye's World Media, and it is almost 11:40 a.m. Eastern Standard Time here. And I'm here with Coach Chris Michel, who I met through Michael Roderick and Jason Van Orton's group, podcasting group. And I think we kind of hit it off right away. There were 50 other people in the group, but it was so lovely to catch up with you. There's something about your presence, your voice, your demeanor, and your book that really captured my attention. So it's gonna like take over the screen right now for people. And I had a lot of questions looking at this cover and thinking what it might be about. And then since then I've made the purchase. Link in description
Thank
wherever
you.
you're watching this. So welcome, Chris. I'm so glad we could share this conversation today.
Oh, thank you, Faye. I'm looking forward to the conversation. And like you said, we've had a couple of conversations, kind of an intro, and just the initial meeting, I was like, oh, I need to talk to this person. There's so much there. And so I'm a fan, by the way. So I'm trying not to fan out on you. So
I have to. This is so interesting, right? Like I just want to take a moment. Something I learned today in a conversation about when two people come together, and the third person is created, is born, because we have different personas. But I also think we bring out different aspects of ourselves when we're in conversation with one another. And I have to tell people that I have been a fan of your work, not even something that you're currently working on, known for in this moment, but when it comes to HVAC, I didn't even know what that word meant until I bought a house. And currently, for people who don't know, I'm going through this, not a crisis, but because of Chris, now I fully understand all the proposals, all the things that are presented to me. And I don't want to, again, position Chris here as the HVAC expert, because he truly is, for just for everyday people to understand it from a uh, business perspective. What are the options? How do you break down something that frankly it's so complicated that you need decades to study for, and every component that you need to understand to make a decision? That's truly a form of art. So I'm really thankful to have met you, and then you spend an hour walking me through all those options. Very
well, you're certainly welcome. It's really funny, Faye. I had a conversation with my brother, my older brother, a couple of months ago. He doing something similar, right? But he's renovating his house, and he had questions. But he's got this turn of the century house, like from the early
Mhm.
1900s, and so they literally pulled this thing down, right? They tore it down to the bare bones, and they were replacing HVAC. And he said, "Can you have a conversation with me?" And he wanted to pay me, and I'm like, "No, no, no, don't. We're just having a conversation." And so when we finished the conversation, one of the best compliments I've ever gotten, he said, "You made this so easy for me to understand. You put it in lay
Mhm.
terms that anybody can understand." And really having conversations with people like you, Faye, and others, it's just that's what I love doing. And I love to take this, what we think is this horribly complex situation, right? And just break it down. And you do that with the YouTube videos and Zoom meetings, right? I mean, the things that you do, and that's where I became a fan, right? Because I was like, oh my gosh, look at all this stuff that she can teach me. But so I understand that and I appreciate that. So thank you for the kind words. And but it is what I do, and that's why I work in the business that I do. I've been in and around HVAC for 18 years. So
Wow.
it's kind of what I do.
Yeah. So for as a clarifying question, that's something we didn't even get to catch up about. Like people who are watching right now, no matter where you are, drop by, let us know, just say hi. We're going to be talking about book, life, some of the heavier subjects that people don't actually talk about. Just as a heads up, probably we'll be talking about topics related to starting your business, but also suicide and writing a book and all that effort. Um, and Chris, like, is that something is HVAC consultation service, is this something that you still actively pursuing, or that's kind of in the background now, in the past?
So for the first I started in HVAC in about 2004 and well, in 2004. And I started out as a person that would go into the home and have a discussion with you, right? So you've had those conversations with the people that you met with.
Mhm.
And I would be that person. I would come in and we'd have the conversation and I would break everything down and try and make it as simple and understanding as possible. I got
Mhm.
into management. I started doing sales and general management. I ran heating and air conditioning companies and operations and all of these things. So I got to see kind of all sides of it. And then I went to work for a manufacturer and a global manufacturer, one of the top ones in the world. And that another eye-opening experience, right? So I have all of this understanding, and when you spend that much time around an industry, right, you see all
Mhm.
sides of it and you really get to understand it. And hopefully you continue to learn along the way, right? So that's kind of my journey in heating and air. And so yes, do I still do it? Not really. I don't still meet with homeowners, but when I do ride-alongs with some of my clients or with some of the people that I do get to work with, I do get to meet with homeowners still, and I get to have these some of these simple conversations, right?
Hmm, so that's interesting. Uh, and then what would be how will you spend the majority of your time these days? Writing, speaking? I want to not just, we're not just having a conversation to promote it. I think this is such a unique opportunity for people to actually understand who you are and what you do, what you currently are focusing on.
Sure. So about a year and a half ago, I got an opportunity to start my own business, and I now am a sales and business coach for the home services, really. So it's not just heating and air and HVAC,
Mhm,
but heating and air, plumbing, electrical, roofers. I mean, anything to do with the home services, I get to help them because, and I look at it from a holistic standpoint because sales is sales. In a lot of ways, sales is sales. Now, I have to understand about landscaping, which I do, but I also have to understand about roofing, and I do work with Habitat on the weekends, so I understand about the construction business in general, right?
mhm,
So because I understand all of these different aspects of the construction or home services industries, I'm able to speak to each one of those and help each one of them to develop a better sales process.
mhm,
Maybe they don't have one, or metrics or KPIs, different things like that. I get to help with to develop that particular piece of their business so that they can be more profitable and so that they can work on the things that they love to work on, which is really helping homeowners and
mhm.
getting them more comfortable, right? And getting them into a safer environment. And sometimes, right? I mean, sometimes we just don't realize how dangerous the situation is, right?
Yeah.
But so that's what I do now. I work with individuals. I also work with companies. As you were talking about my book, I wrote a book. It came out, the Red Chair Experience, a couple of months ago, and so there it is. And so, right, I step aside, but so uh, I wrote that, and that is taking on a life of its own because
Mhm,
of, as you and I have talked briefly about this, and we're going to talk a little bit further today. What's coming about from the book is this persona, as you said, right? That there's an audience for this book, and this book talks to people about the emotional side of things, and that's really what I've learned over the last probably 5 years,
mhm,
really in depth, as I've gone through these different life experiences that we all get to go through, right? But they talk about the top 5 things you shouldn't do, right? You shouldn't move, you shouldn't get divorced, you shouldn't get married, you shouldn't have babies, you shouldn't, right? You shouldn't do all these things, change jobs, you shouldn't do all these things, birth, death, you shouldn't, right?
mhm,
And I say shouldn't, but they say those are the top 5 stressors, right? Well, guess what I've done in the last 3 years, right? So I've literally gotten to see and experience almost every one of those,
mhm.
and some of them were like back to back to back. So it was almost like the hits just keep on coming, right? And so I got to learn from an emotional standpoint how to listen, surrender. I read a book called The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. And that taught me a whole lot about how to surrender to the things that are in your life, right? What's happening and what's going on. It doesn't mean you're defeated by it. It means you accept where you are and what's happening around you, and you find the positive things around you, right? And you learn from those things and you move through them. So
Mhm.
that was a long-winded question, or a long-winded answer to your question.
Oh, no, I love it, and thanks for sharing the book, recommended, by Chris. So here you go. Here's an Amazon link for people who wanna check it out as well, both Chris's book and this new one you mentioned, Michael A. Singer, The Surrender Experiment. And I think one thing, uh, Chris, there's a lot to break down. So for people who want to learn more about HVAC, let me just say, in my family, there has not been a single plumber, electrician, people in these jobs. And until I got a home 2 years ago, I thought to myself, everybody, to all my friends, my family, you guys are in the wrong business. What a fantastic skill to have growing up or at some point in your career to learn about all those things because
Yeah,
literally seeing Cluen on the ground in the basement, running around like, "Mom, hide! It is 20 degrees outside. We're all gonna die. Let me call somebody." And it is you can freak out not having those skills. So I just
Right.
want to highlight how important some of those skills are, and I wish that we can learn more in school and teach our kids more about it. But then, maybe we can elaborate more on making the connection to part of your work today, which is, you know, i- in the past few years, especially for some people, but like you said, in the past decade, maybe for you, for people you're close to, you've experienced a lot of things that are unpredictably just happened in front
Right.
of your eyes, and having to deal with them. So, um, I think your book is a fantastic guide, and I think we should maybe talk about that and give people an idea of what it means. So, um, to connect all the dots, I think based on what you said, it's like show, don't tell. But can I actually, you know what? I was
Go ahead.
thinking that maybe I can just quickly share. Oh, unable to permission to upload. Okay, so it's like it's so funny. Kindle may or may not allow us to
Right.
actually share this, right?
That's okay. What
Um,
date are you looking at? I have my copy of the book right here. What
fantastic.
what date are you looking at?
You know, my my birthday is on the 24th. Well, I started reading the book a few days ago. So I
Okay.
was looking at like June 18th, 19th, right? So this book
Okay.
that Chris has written called A Red Chair Experience for people who are like, what is this? I don't know what's going on. Link in description. You can check out, the Kindle version. There's a physical copy as well. It is so lighthearted because as I was reading, like for instance, on my birthday, June 24th, which is in just a couple of days, I love the fact that, you always start with a quote to help
Mhm.
people visualize a book. The good part about getting older is that you stop trying to prove anything to anyone, including yourself. All you're in the pursuit of is a collective experience, beautiful, fragile little soap bubbles that you store in your heart. And every once in a while, you pull one out of the gaze and the delicate pictures it shows you. Uh, Twinkle Kana, I don't know who that is, but it's a sounds really interesting, and you go into your own experience, your own writing,
Mhm.
and it ends today. There's an action item. There's a not a to do, but there's something to reflect upon, such as on the
Sure.
24th today, I'll find the experiences that I have wanted or needed and plan to start living for those experiences. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, this is the exact reminder that I need. So
Mhm.
you have parts of that every single day. And I like the structure of that. And yeah. How did you ideate this book to kind of connect all the dots?
So, part of it came about because I had been reading books like this that were similar to this, and the book came about as a result of the death of my brother, who he died by suicide in September of 19. And 6 months later, we started the pandemic, right? We started what was this we didn't know what it was, and all of a sudden it's hitting us like a freight train, right? And so 2 months after the beginning of the pandemic in May of 20, a buddy of mine sends me a meme and it says, if you're not during this pandemic, if you are not working to better yourself, working on a side hustle, doing something to improve yourself, it's not that you didn't have time, it's that you wasted your time. And that to me was kind of the catalyst. So shout out again to Mike Dixon. Every time I mention that story, it's Mike Dixon was the guy who did that. And he shared that with me. And I don't think he was looking for, some deep ethereal meaning, but that's just Mike, right? Mike just wanted to share that and encourage me with that. So I took that and it just really hit home for me. And I said, I've always wanted to write a book. What's it about? Well, these daily inspirations really kind of came around. Right. And so that's what it was for me, was this daily inspiration. And I got the opportunity to start writing it. And so that's really where it came from. But I love the idea. And I was fascinated by these different quotes, right? So
Mhm.
there's a quote in there from Snoop Dogg, right? And he talks about the gap. And there's um, Hyaclides is also, and I'm not sure that I'm pronouncing that properly, but these great philosophers in years gone by, right? And you've got these Barack Obama and Oprah Winfrey, right? I mean, people that we
Mhm.
know, but then there's others. You're like, who's that person? Just like you
Mhm.
said, who in the world is that? I looked at them, and when I pulled out these quotes, when I was just searching for them, and I really looked for something that inspired me, that said, "Oh man, that really kind of hits home, and that relates to, like you said, open to opportunities, right? So on your birthday, you're talking about open to,
Mhm.
are you open to opportunities? And so that to me kind of just hit home, and it made sense to use that. Or a lot of the quotes really do, just they kind of tie into the topic, if you will.
Mm.
But that's where the whole idea came from. It was something I'd been reading for years. And it was just one of those things where I was like, you know what, these, I kind of meshed them all together, if you will, and kind of came up with my version of it.
And I
So
also like the fact that the book kinda opens to in the middle. I downloaded the, like, sort of the e-version because I wanted to be able to access that right away. I would probably prefer the physical version, but I like how even on the in the browser, it opens in the middle. Did you structure all the pages to be exactly like 2 pages or a little less, so every day is kind of opening to a new full new page?
so I really didn't structure it that way. It Some of it works out that way. Some of it really works out that way. But the reality is some of them are no more than 300 words. Some
Mhm,
of them are 800 words, right?
mhm.
So what's fascinating to me was when I was writing the book, the number of words. This is actually 130,000 words, 400 pages. Okay.
Oh, wow, longer than
So,
I thought, okay.
right. So, if you take that 130,000, divide that by 366, you come up with about I think it's 350,
Okay.
close to 350, 350 words per. So, that's really what it is. It's a blog post, right? I
Mhm,
mean, it's a short blog post, but it's a blog post. And that was kind of the inspiration too, was what is this something I wanted something that I could share on a regular basis with LinkedIn or Facebook, or
mm,
right with my, hopefully my audience, or what
mhm,
I thought was my audience, right? And just put that message out there. And like I said, the book has really taken on a world of its own, because this isn't, there are sales things in it, but it's not specific to sales. And
mhm,
so if there is a sales thing that day, you may be able to apply it to whatever you do, whether it's marketing or HR or
mhm.
finance.
Mm. Interesting when we have interviewed a lot of authors on this podcast, and I always trying to kinda leave, the audience with something, like something related to learning or teaching, and obviously, like, everyone processes the information differently. It's not like I don't actually believe in replicating success, and some of that can really be done in a very straightforward way.
Yeah.
But, I was thinking, like, when you wrote the book, who did you think were your audience versus who are you witnessing as your true audience? People were really learning a lot from the book. Is there any gaps or discrepancies?
So honestly, when I wrote it, it was for therapeutic or cathartic reasons.
Yeah.
Because again, it was my brother, and then we hit this pandemic, right? And so I'm writing the book from May of 2020 to November of 21. It took me about a year and a half to write it. And so every day I wasn't thinking, who's my audience? I was thinking, for me personally, I was kind of writing what I realized after this was all said and done about 3 weeks ago. I realized through having conversations with people that this was written to 10 years ago me.
Mhm,
And this is a book about understanding the emotional side of life, right? That as young men in society, we're not taught to be emotional. Now,
mhm,
granted, some households they do a fantastic job, and they really show the softness and the hardness, right? I mean, they show both sides of things, and it's not
mhm,
just about the logic, it's about the emotional, right?
mhm,
But for a number of us men, when we grew up, we weren't taught that emotional side. We weren't taught the touchy feely kind of stuff, and how to let emotions wash over you, and to sit in them and to experience them, and then to move forward, right? Not to
mhm,
move on, but to move forward, right? And so that's what I started to learn when all of these things were going on, because I had been through this divorce. I lost my job, right? Changed, or not lost my job, changed jobs, moved. My daughter got married. I started a health journey, right? Started because there was a lot of things that were going on with my gut health, and so I ended up going gluten free and vegan, and or mostly plant based. Yeah, we didn't talk about that yet. I know. So,
I'm
and
gluten
so
free as well. Yeah,
yeah.
awesome.
So, but I did it because I'd seen all these things that were going on with my life, right? So all of this stuff is happening, and then my brother dies, and
Mm,
then we hit the pandemic, and then in February of 21, my dad died, and
Mm,
then in March of 21, my grandson was born. So my oldest daughter had her first son, and literally days after he was born, I'm in the hospital with COVID pneumonia and dealing with that for a week. And then I get out, I finish the book, and here we are, right? And it's
mm,
like all of this stuff has gone on during this short period of time, right? During this couple 2-3 year window. And that really is what spoke to what I was trying to do. So I didn't have a person in mind other than probably me, right?
mhm,
And it literally just became this therapeutic type of conversation that I was having. And so as I was going through therapy at the time because of all the things were happening, but I was talking with somebody and writing this book, and it really just became, if you will, kind of an extension of journaling, right?
mhm,
For
mhm,
me. And so when I first exposed, if you will, some of the pages of the book to people, they were kind of taken back by it. They're like, wow, that's really vulnerable. Are you sure you want to do that? Right. And I was
mhm,
like, yeah, I am. I'm okay with doing that because again, I was learning to be more, if you will, emotional, right? I was
mm.
learning to be this other version of myself that was there, but just never really came out. So,
Yeah, because you were a football player, I saw that, and I assume the way that you brought up people I assume we make a lot of assumptions when we meet people for the first time. I know that you have, tremendous respect for your stepfather as well, which
mhm,
you've written about. Um, but even as a woman growing up in the '80s and the '90s, I too remember how vulnerability is seen to be a bad thing. Like, you are supposed to
mhm,
hide your emotions. You've been instructed
right.
specifically to do so. When my dad was diagnosed with cancer, we all
Mm,
know it was stage 3. Esophageal cancer didn't really still don't have a ton of a breakthrough,
right.
experimentations. I remember myself landing in Beijing, China, after a 24-hour flight. Everybody saw me as like, "We're driving to the hospital now. Don't cry. Don't cry when you see your dad."
Oh, wow.
And then, lately, you just last night, I was watching a film. I think it's called The Old Man. I do recommend it's on Hulu. I really look forward to it. Of course, we
Okay.
know it's not about the old man. Of course, he's got some special abilities, but it was
Right.
crazy. One of the scenes was about this grandson losing his parents, and then the grandpa, like,
Mm,
oh, had to run away, and then cry. And then the grandma came over. It's like,
mm,
have you ever thought that you might be able to cry with him? Maybe you can cry in front of him? It was so
yeah.
transformative for me to hear that, and, that's yeah, I'm gonna pause because I really wanna get into therapy. I had to write it down so I don't forget. I do wanna talk about therapy, but any thoughts from you?
No, so I just watched a show last
Mm,
night. Some friends had told me about this, and my girlfriend had mentioned it as well. It's called Hustle, right? It's
mm,
on Netflix, and it's a really cool movie about basketball. And the main character is gets the opportunity to stand up for himself, but also for somebody else he had this unfortunate experience in his life that he was raising his daughter, he was living with his mom, right? So the three of them are living kind of in this poverty stricken situation in Spain. And this guy comes over from the US and he discovers this guy. He's a phenomenal basketball player, but he needs some work, right? He needs to do these things. Well, towards the very end, no, spoiler alert, but towards the end of the movie, mom and son are talking, and he was disappointed about where he was in his life and what was going on. But the storyline really kind of took a hook for me right there, which was mom said, when I got here and saw you, you were the person I knew you could be and you wanted to be. You were so different. You had changed so much. You had taken the weight off of your shoulders and put it on this other guy, this American, right, who came over to help him. And she said, he became the mighty oak for you.
mm,
And the cool thing for that was, how often do we as people think that we have to be this tough
mm,
person, right? To your point, don't cry in front of dad. Yeah,
mm,
he's
mm.
dying or these things are going on. Don't make it worse by crying in front of him.
Don't make it worse. Right.
wait, how am I making it worse?
Right.
I'm showing the love that I have for this person. I'm showing the emotion that is being brought out by these things, right? And
Mm,
so I can sit and watch these movies now and be brought to tears, right? Because I
mhm,
see the emotional side of it, and it brings chills to me about, the conversation and wanting that for my kids, right? I want to make sure that I have those conversations and tell them how proud I am of them, and how much I
mhm,
love them. And I
mm,
do that on the regular because that wasn't something that was provided for me when I was growing up, right? It wasn't,
yeah.
I'm proud of you. I think you're awesome. You're doing amazing things. And I do. I mean, I love my kids. They're doing amazing things. And it's watching them grow and flourish into the women that they are becoming is just right. It's amazing. It's really, really cool.
Yeah, I can tell just how proud you are of, both of your daughters, uh, and that's a beautiful thing, like, I just have this sense of, like, you're accepting them as who they are, and they can share these real conversations with you. They don't have to hide or filter or change the narrative somehow. That is beautiful. So, I wanna touch upon the therapy. It's something that
Sure.
I feel so admitting therapy. Oh, by the way, I have a session coming up right after this. Yeah, literally not kidding.
Yay.
Uh, yeah, I mean, a big shout out to, mental health actually,
Yeah.
METTLE. I can't believe I actually get to say this, but I have a session in an hour, with Dr. BJ Miller. Their therapists are just amazing. For me, I don't they specialize. A quick shout out, but I wanted some information. Speaking of the issues of, or the challenges of suicide, disability, palliative care, grief. They're things that are anticipatory grief, as in that that could be happening when your friend is sick. And while you're in the middle of it, I don't have to elaborate further on that. I remember
Yeah.
that I finally understood what being in the trenches meant, like really
Yeah.
for real, struggling, everyday struggle, everyday fear. When my dad was sick, especially towards the end, as in the whole year, I was down to 105 pounds. I see the pictures of myself.
Wow.
I was eating, more or less sleeping. I didn't even think twice about it. But
Right.
man, I've never been that light ever in my life, and just frail.
Yeah.
And then post this, like, traumatic stress, that was also so real. Not
Yeah.
being able to process that and have it be part of your body, is tremendous. So I would admit, first and foremost, that, I started my dad passed away when I was 26. I started therapy immediately. I couldn't really tell my family and some of my friends in China. They
Mm.
didn't get it. They would be worried about
Sure.
me if I that would be my choice. And I did it again towards my late 20s, and I had this gap of no therapy, nothing. Oh, phase world is thriving, business. And then I realized, you know what? Now, in this moment, my mom's here with me, safe. We're in good health. Now is the time for me to really ramp up,
Mm.
learn as much as I can to be in a good place.
Sure.
It's a privilege. So that's what I'm doing. And I
Yeah.
encourage everybody to not think of therapy as in, I'm okay. Nobody's dying right now, actively dying. So that's kind of my experience. I want to be vulnerable first. But Chris, please share what you have learned in therapy or why you started that.
Well, first of all, thank you for sharing that because a lot of us we feel like it's shameful for us to have that conversation, right? And I know that a lot of the Chinese culture is and Japanese culture is about honor. It's always
Mhm,
about, saving face and that kind of stuff. And so I appreciate you sharing that and because it's not an easy thing, right? For us to
mhm,
stand up and say, hey, you know what? I'm getting help, right?
mhm,
I'm raising my hand and saying, yeah, things are going well, but to your point, I've had a bit of a gap
mhm,
um, where I felt like, okay, I'm in a good place and things are moving in the right direction, and I can go ahead and take a break.
mhm,
But there's been something calling me back to say, hey, it's time to check back in, right? It's time to have those conversations again. And even as good as a relationship as you have with your BFF, right?
mhm,
And it could be your parents, it could be your mom, your dad, whatever. But
mhm,
as good a relationship as you have,
mhm,
there's still some things you may not be able to have that conversation with
mhm,
them about, right?
mhm,
And so it's always good to have that check in with the mental health, right? And one of my dear friends from high school, her name's Carmen. Shout out to Carmen. But Carmen, I mean, she decided to she chose to walk into that profession, right?
mhm,
And good on her. And I appreciate all of her work around that. and people like her, right? That step out on the front lines and say, "Hey, I can do this." My aunt is another person um, who does this on the regular. I mean, she helps people. She
Mm.
really does help people, and I love going to visit her. She's kind of therapy every time I go visit her. It's kind of cool,
Yeah,
but
that's awesome.
um, yeah. So, but yeah, for me personally, I'm a huge believer in it now. I didn't understand it before, and again, it was a sign of weakness, right? It was this
Mhm.
sign of, well, you can't do that because then people will think you're weak and you can't be tough. Being a football player, growing up in an all male household, right? I grew up in a single parent household with all males, right? So it was just me and my two brothers and my dad. And again, not a lot of touchy feely, not a lot of
Mm,
expressions of love going on there other than, here, let me provide a roof over your head. Let me feed, make sure that there's food on the table and that kind of thing. Um,
mm,
those kind of things, kind of stunt that growth, if you will. And so learning these things and seeing them, I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. We're all not perfect, right? But we all get the opportunity to raise our hand and say, "Hey, I do need some help." And there's nothing wrong with that. And we're seeing that more and more. I love the fact that some of these, main athletes are stepping out and saying, "Hey, I'm not okay. I need to take a break," right? Simone
mhm,
Biles, when she stepped out of the Olympics, I mean, that was her shining moment. And she does what? She steps back and she goes, "Not right now. I just can't."
mm,
And good for her, right?
mm,
And we
mm,
all have that opportunity. Sometimes we have to step back and say, "Not right now. I need a break. I need to spend time on my own." To your point, after my brother died, there were many days where I caught myself, just kind of in this funk, right? In this place of like, what am I doing? Right.
mhm,
And it happens to all of us, right? If we understand what's happening. Same thing. I was going through my health journey at the time, and I went on a total elimination diet, and my brother died. And then, I'm starting to learn about this stuff with my body, and I literally got to a size that was pre high school, right? I
mm.
mean, for me, I'm 6'5". Okay, let's start with that. I'm I'm 6'5". So, if you go by all the charts and everything, I should be somewhere between what is it, like 209 and 185 pounds, which is a bunch of junk, anyways.
No,
They're so wrong. Yeah, they're so
185?
wrong. Yeah, yeah. But I did. I got back down to under 210 pounds, and
Mm,
I had never been that small, and since I was in high school.
mm,
And so, I'm healthy. I'm fine. I'm at really at the weight that I played college football at right now. So I'm in a healthy spot. I'm in a good spot. I do Bikram yoga on Sundays, right? I do all kinds
good
of
for
good stuff.
you. Wow,
So
look
yeah,
at I just wanna take a moment and say, like, all these virtual meetings and Zoom meetings, I noticed, like, right, if I just lean in, we're, like, the same size, and, I think this is so interesting, like, whenever I gotta say in the past 3 years, and frankly, like, I'm just gonna derail for a quick second, the 7 years because of the internet and meeting different people, Dory Clark, Seth Godin, huge shout out of these communities all around the US, even around the world. I never get to meet these people. I so want them to be like close to me by proximity, be part of my life. And I see them on Zoom or some, Google Meet. And until I meet them finally, or like we start talking about describing ourselves, I'll be like, what? We
yeah,
recently had another like, "Stephen Thompson, you are 6'4". The entire group was shocked. We all
right,
thought he was like this very like, kinda like average size, like very cut it's just so funny that,
right,
like, people with or without masks on these days, you can't tell who's who anymore, like,
right.
start introducing myself, and Jesse's like, "What? We've known each other for I didn't recognize this was you."
Yeah,
It's so weird. I love
yeah.
it, I love it.
Yeah,
Uh,
and I'm doing the same thing. I'm just now getting out to some meetings where we haven't met forever, right? We've been on Zoom meetings and people see me and I'm like, right, I met this woman that um at an event, probably it's been a year now, but I
yeah.
met her at an event, and she was like, we looked eye to eye. She was 6'1". She is 6'1", six
I
foot,
love
six
it.
foot one. And I was like, wow, Iris, I had no idea. And it was really kind of cool, right? Because we were having this conversation.
Yeah.
But yeah, you don't get to see these people, and we all look the same size, right? We all have the same screen, right? No.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's pretty cool.
exactly. I could be 6'4" right now.
There you go.
So, yeah, so don't tempt to, I this is another thing, like, my, the other day, I was just reflecting on when you are, I'm 5'4", so I'm like, I'm not tiny or anything, but it's like there's part of my life I look back on. I was like, I always wanted to look and appear to be more intimidating. Like I always thought it was really cool. Like people look at me once, I turn around, it's like I want them to take a step back and not to mess with me. Obviously, it's never ever happened in my life, so I'm still waiting for that moment. Um, that's not in a, like a taekwondo dojo or something. That's like a fantasy for me. But uh, yeah, so Chris, based on what you said, it actually
Mhm,
reflected one of the articles. As much as I love your writing on my birthday, June
mhm.
24th, there's something that hit me on June 21st, which was what, yesterday as I was preparing for this.
Yeah.
Um, this kind of worked out beautifully because literally in that moment, 5 minutes before, my mom shared a WeChat article with me. According, it's all in Chinese, so I had to listen to it. It says, according to the Washington Post, and of course I couldn't find that actual article, is that the 10 most luxury items that you could possibly possess in life. And I immediately was going to turn it off because I didn't want to hear another talk about Louis Vuitton bags or something, right?
Right.
And then of course none of those 10 things has anything to do with goods or expensive items. Instead,
Mm,
it was all about, your peace of mind and a healthy mindset, a belief
mm,
system, being able to sleep well. And then there's one thing that really hit me. The final thing was the ability to light up other people. So I,
mm.
it's a very short quote, a very short article. I'm not going to read the whole thing, give it away, but on,
I'll
so
Faye,
selfless.
if you I was gonna say, Faye, if you'd like, I'll read it.
Oh
I have
yeah,
no
please
problem with that.
do. On
I'll read it.
June
Okay.
21st.
June 21st, selflessness. It is amazing what you can accomplish if you do not care who gets the credit. That was Harry S. Truman. Do you go about your life seeing what you can get out of everyone else, or do you find ways to use your talents and abilities to help others excel or progress? Often we are more concerned about our next promotion, our credit for doing the right thing, or our self promotion versus lifting other people up. Do you look for ways that you can help others grow, or are you just making yourself look better? Learning the value and joy of helping others to grow and mature is incredible, especially when done with no ulterior motives. This can be a hard lesson to learn when most of what we hear is what's in it for me. Being selfish means loving others more, being selfless means loving others more than yourself. The other side of this is codependency, where you are reliant upon helping others in their bad habits or character traits. Being able to find the balance is a good thing and can be a refreshing reward. Today, I will look for ways to lift up others with a pure heart and see the selfishness that I can put aside for others. So, yeah,
Oh,
that's one of the shorter ones too. So,
how how's that for a like a different approach that just kind of hit me because I feel like what really, in a selfish way, the events, not just projects, people and things that I'm doing that give me such tremendous amount of satisfaction and energy are the ones that I get to light up something in someone else.
yeah.
Especially in ways that they may not be able to do it on their own. So that is just, I have to say, I always say it almost feels selfish to like
Mm,
feel that tremendous amount of joy. One of the projects I have to give a shout out is Gustavo Serafini's Enable Disable project. We started in April last year. And at this point, I can't believe the project is, I told him just now, like an hour ago, a year and 2 months, we've interviewed more than 50 people with
wow.
people who identify themselves as with a disability, some with invisible disabilities.
Mhm.
And now, I mean, guys, at this point, go to the website enabledisable.com. But then in July, for instance, Gustavo is invited not only be on the Omnium Circus, which is the only circus to feature people, everyone with some sort of with a
Mm,
disability, to be in a circus act. And they're not yet a traveling tour. I really hope they become one. And now, Gustavo's on the board as a board member, and he's invited to speak at the New York Public
wow.
Library in a 4-week series in July to talk about all these things. It's just like, wow, it's just incredible. So when I
Very
read
cool.
this, I was like, every word resonated with me and makes me
Mm,
think about what I want to do, start doing, continue doing, that sort of thing.
yeah. Yeah. Well, and this is what I love about the book, right? Something that hits you today, it may not resonate with you tomorrow, right? You may have had your fill of learning about those things for tomorrow, right? but one day you pick it up and you go, wow, okay, this really hit home. And that's what I tried to describe in the introduction, right? And I don't know if you got a chance to read that, but that's what I really describe in the introduction is just take it for what it is. Some days it's going to hit you and other days not so much. And that's
Mhm.
okay. But keep coming back to it because you're going to find things every single time. I still, by the way, I do read this every morning. And it's not
Mm,
out of, oh, what powerful words did I have to say? It has nothing to do with that. It's, I literally read it and I go, okay, that was good. That really hit home for
mm,
me and that resonated. Or not so much. Let me pick up one of the other books I read. So I read 4 different books every morning. This is just one of them.
wow. So what has hit you the most recently, whether it's from your own book, don't worry, it's like shout out's fine, or other books? It's something that kind of hit you, something you need
I
recently.
think the thing that keeps resonating with me is this being honest with yourself and
Mhm,
the ability to be in touch, be present, be aware of what's going on around you and not just kind of do your own thing, right? Just go about your business and forget about others, but
mhm,
really thinking about what's going on, what's happening around you, right? Our anxiety is caused by this fear of everything happening or collapsing around us, right?
mm,
Or these feelings that we get that are sometimes justified, but most of the times probably not. And
mhm,
I'm not speaking for anybody in their anxiety. I'm speaking to myself. But for me, my anxiety is brought about by this fear of what I should have done or could have done, or what about this and what about that? Could this happen? Could that happen? Right. And then I start thinking and worrying about all these things that are really out of my control.
mhm,
And then when I look at my feet and I realize that I'm planted firmly on the ground and I'm okay, right? And I'm
mm,
safe, I'm in a safe spot, it can really remove a lot of that. So for me, it's the continued ability to stay present and where I'm at right now and what's going on around me and being mindful of that or aware of that and what's happening.
mm. Could you give us an example or like you maybe a practice where, maybe sometimes for specific reasons where we're like, oh, we're really upset, something that, it's there,
Sure.
like the boiler broke or something. But also sometimes, I've actually in the past month or so, there was like I identified. I'm very lucky to say that doesn't occur to me all that often, but there was one time I was just everything was fine, and I walked around, and all of a sudden I just had this like a very quick sense of sadness or like
Mm,
emptiness. Be like, oh, when I'm here, what am I gonna do? What did I do today? What am I gonna do next? And then it did go away fairly
mhm.
quickly, but I also know some of my friends are kind of living in it pretty
Yeah.
continuously. And so have you experienced those moments and how do you like I hate to use the word snap yourself out of it. What do you do? Where do you be in
Mhm.
the present? Do you move? Do you choose to be in nature?
So it's going to be different for everybody, right? We all have our own tips and tricks and tools that work, and I would encourage everyone to do that to find out what works for you. What typically, excuse me, what typically works for me is recognizing it first and foremost, right? It's like
Mhm,
anything. They say if you don't recognize that you have a problem,
mhm,
then you won't do anything about it, right? So
mhm,
it's recognizing, wait, this is happening, and it's not necessarily a problem. It's something that's coming up, right? It's an awareness that you go, hey, this is happening. I feel sad. Okay,
mhm,
why am I sad? What's happening? What's going on around me? And I the other day I woke up and I was completely overwhelmed. There was a lot of stuff going on, and I was thinking about everything around me.
mhm,
And so I sat in my chair and I read and then I just meditated and I kind of just washed everything away and it's not that you forget it. I still had the same problems as when I sat down, right, and did that, but it was the
mm,
ability to be able to say, okay, I'm aware of this. This is happening.
mhm,
Now what can I do with it? Right? And
mm,
we all have that opportunity. If we continue to feed it, what happens to the monster? It gets bigger and bigger and bigger and all of a sudden you're out of control and you're hyperventilating, you can't breathe and right? And now
mhm,
you can't function.
mhm,
It's
mm,
recognizing first and foremost, and it's becoming aware of it and then moving through that, right? And you don't move past it, you move through it with whatever works for you, prayer, meditation, reading your Bible, reading inspirational books like this, right? Listening to music, right? Sometimes
mm,
for people, it could be listening to like Reiki or meditation music, right? Or classical music or whatever, right? Some people just need some sort of thing to help kind of ground them. And that's what I
Mhm,
do. That works for me, and I would encourage people to find out what that is for them, and and kind of gravitate to that. Recognize
mhm.
what's going on, and then gravitate to what you know is gonna help you to move through what's going on.
Mm, I love the tips like reading, meditating. Something else I found for me, for instance, if it resonates with anybody who's listening here, is visuals really help me. I have stickers in front of me right now, like certain mantra I just have to remind myself, like letting go. Like, for instance, letting go relationships that no longer serve us in the right way.
Mhm.
It
Yeah,
doesn't mean you have to go out there and announce it to people. I think that's really hard for me, being an only
yeah,
child and all that and traveling and moving and saying goodbyes constantly. There's a sense of like, okay, I'm alone. I've been an only child, but at the same time, it's like I don't have I don't have a ton of very close, intimate relationships, and I kind of want to nurture. But then sometimes you're
sure.
like, you gotta let go. Sometimes people also travel through your life. Like there
Yeah,
might be super close now, you're distanced for a while, they might come back in. And for us to force certain relationships is not helpful. But I
yeah,
also wrote down be patient with yourself. Do less work, focus on you, meditate twice a day. Meditating twice a day, I learned from David G recently.
yeah,
Chris, I'd love for you to check out his work as well.
yeah.
We always sometimes rely on the one meditation, morning, evening. But then he said, just giving yourself like that 2 times, like twice a day,
Mm,
that
yeah,
chance, you hit the core more easily. And for me, I'm not a great guitar player or a ukulele player, but it's there. I can even see
yeah,
it when I go on a Zoom call. So when I'm stressed in between, to be like, you know what? Let me just hit some chords. Let me just learn one thing, 5 minutes a day, and that really transforms me. But obviously, the best, if possible, is for me to. I take 2 walks every single day, each at about like 45
mm,
minutes to an hour. And then sometimes I listen to music. I try not to listen to podcasts. I keep thinking and working. And then I turn my AirPods Pro if needed on a transparency mode. So I love to hear the wind, the bird, and sometimes just
yeah,
walk, just listening to nature. So very, very therapeutic.
yeah.
Highly recommended.
Yeah, and I absolutely, I love getting out and walking in nature, right? Some people really love nature, others don't, right?
Mhm,
And so I love what you said, right? Even getting away from the podcast.
mhm,
One of the things that I was in an a cappella group in college
mhm.
and was a huge fan of Take Six and the Nylons and other a cappella type groups like that. And so Pitch Perfect was a great movie for me. I really enjoyed that, right? But for me, even to be able to listen to a cappella music now, or one of my favorite songs is Blackbird by the Beatles, right? And I was
Uh-huh,
listening to it this morning and harmonizing and listening to it. And for me, that's to your point, it's very therapeutic, right?
mhm,
That kind of resonates with me. That kind of stuff resonates in for my internal person, right? And it
mhm,
works with me very well. So
mhm. This is so lovely. Oh my god. I know that I booked 45 minutes. I if I may, I wanna do, like Chris, anything that people should know, feel free to, like, throw it in for sure. And, ooh, look at this. Oh, look at that. Robin, thank you
Robin,
so much for your comment. We
yep,
love it. For, like,
love
friends.
me some Robin. Yep.
I love the fact that, maybe that's in the work. My mom's an artist that don't have dogs or pets. I'm obsessed with dogs. I live in a neighborhood where they're just the most adorable dogs running around. I would literally run on somebody else in front of their houses and then start playing with their dogs. I
Yeah.
couldn't do it for the longest time during COVID. Now with vaccination, I'm like, like it's awesome as a reminder that people are, that you have to go out
Yeah.
and it's fantastic. So my people love it. And so I want to talk briefly about gluten free. And that
Yes.
is a discovery for me, real quick. People have heard this before on my YouTube channel, even, but I did not want to believe I needed to be gluten free. I grew up
Mm,
eating some of these things and I still love, I have a sweet tooth for sure. And like, you know what? What the heck? I'm just going to try it. I did it many times. For those who are listening, 30 days wasn't enough for me. For me, it actually started to really transform everything about 60 day in. And for my
mhm.
friend Sean, it was about 80 days. So I hate the fact that this is not like a 2 day, 2 week thing for you to actually see the difference. And it was
Right.
huge for me. What was it like for you, Chris?
Yeah, so the reason I did it was because obviously there was a lot of gut health issues that I was having, and
Me
I
too.
I struggled for I don't know, 20 plus years, almost 30 years with gout. And so a lot of inflammation, a lot of things happening. And so my girlfriend who had and has celiacs,
Mhm.
she helped me to understand it and kind of get a part of that.
Mhm.
And what I've seen as I continue on this journey, every once in a while I'll have some gluten. I can do that. She can't. But
Mhm.
every once in a while I'll have some gluten. You know, I'll have a pizza or whatever, right? But
Mhm.
but I know where I know where I'm healthiest and I know where I feel the best. And really it's about the inflammation, it's about the gut health. And what I learned for me is I can't do those things
Mhm.
continuously like I used to because it really messes with my body. Now,
Mm.
some people are fortunate, they don't have those issues.
Yeah.
Other people, they do have those issues, they don't realize it, right?
Yeah, they don't know.
So it's there's a lot of great alternatives. There's a lot of opportunities out there. Shout out to Sweet Loren's cookies, right? Yeah, write that down. Sweet Loren's cookies. Um,
I'm getting it.
they are gluten free and vegan, so they're really good. Yeah, so check them out. They're in the refrigerated section. Anyways, so
Refrigerated. Oh, I love it.
they're yeah, they're basically what cut and cook kind of kind of thing. So but yeah,
Wow.
there are plenty of opportunities and plenty of things out there that are available.
Mhm.
And so many of us, especially here in America, we don't realize the all of the stuff that we get is processed, right? I mean,
Yeah.
most of the foods that we eat are processed. And so I love the European and even the Asian model where a
Mhm.
lot of the foods that are eaten there are fresh and
Yeah.
they're whole, right? They're
Mhm.
whole foods, vegetables, fruits, and things like that that you can actually go and pick and then you cook them and you work with them,
Mhm.
rices and things like that. I mean, all of those things they're available to us, right? But we're so used to this instant world that we live in that we want to go to McDonald's, we want to go to Burger King, right? We want to go and pick up our hamburgers and we want to make this quick and blah blah blah. So yeah, there's plenty of alternatives, and so
We're so used to the instant world that we live in. I think that's such a quote that we can use because of not just that, digital marketing, how to build your business, how to make money today, right now. It's like, guys, extend out the timeline a bit. Uh,
yeah,
it's beautifully said, and for me, it was a huge deal. I remember just working in consulting business for 10 years, for a solid decade. Of course, every day eating rushed meals,
yeah.
every morning, coffee, no food in my tummy,
Mm,
and ever since my early 30s, it was just constant. I didn't even know what it was. I didn't know there was GERD, acid
yeah.
reflux. A lot of people had it, but I just had the worst. Not necessarily the worst, but I had an episode that I was in the middle of rural China and I go to the emergency room, and that taught me a serious lesson of
Oh, wow.
thinking I was going to die. Oh, there's clearly a heart attack, and it wasn't. So
Yeah.
all these things we don't learn about our bodies in school, and you don't know like how
Right.
something's very wrong, and then coming back to decide, and once I suffer through that, it was literally a year and a half. I couldn't sleep through the night. I have to get up in the middle of the night,
Yeah.
hear my pounding, like my heart is pounding out of my chest, taking acid reflux pills, and then always worried every time I leave the house. If I leave the house without ranitidine or something, I'm like, "Oh god, this I'm gonna, like, die halfway through
Right.
dinner." But then going gluten-free, it just resolved all of that, and I'm like you, Chris, I don't think I'm celiac, so I have my little pills, and then if I need to eat I don't know, like a mozzarella sticks or some breading on the outside, I just pop in the pill. But even these days, I try to avoid that because it's like there's certain things you have to pay for. Um, I have pizza and it's like, ah,
Yeah.
sciatica, muscle pain kicks right in. It's like, this is not worth
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. And, it's again, it's part of the awareness, right? When we
Mhm,
learn to recognize what's going on with ourselves, we don't we don't have to live in the pain. I used to wake up every morning, and I would ask myself, I'd sit on my bed and I would say, okay, what hurts today?
mhm, mhm,
That was the life that I was living. And I'd gotten to this point where literally every morning I'd wake up and go, okay, I do a full body assessment, right? Just kind of, okay, what hurts today?
mhm,
And I remember waking up doing that every morning and going, why am I doing this?
mhm,
Why do
mhm,
I have to live like this? And so that was part of my kind of turn with my health journey, right? And starting
mhm,
to move in a direction that said, wait, I've got to do something different. I can't
Mm,
keep doing what I'm doing. And
mhm,
being a former athlete, I've learned to live with pain, right? I learned
mm,
to live with certain level of this is uncomfortable. It's not a big
mhm,
deal. Well, for a normal person,
mhm,
this would be excruciating, right? But I'm
mhm.
just kind of going, it's not that big of a deal, right?
True.
I can barely walk, but it's cool. At least I can
I
walk.
I know, 'cause I was a I was a skater, skateboarding for, many years from, like, age 9 to 15. I
Yeah.
even showcased, "Oh, look at these injuries, look at all," and then in high school, I played hockey. In college, I was doing taekwondo full time. So you're right, very used to tolerating pain. I was very
Mhm,
proud of it. But yeah, it's actually not healthy. Not that we,
mhm,
have the demand, like, perfection or, like, I'm feeling perfect today, but I think we need to be very much we need to be more in touch with our bodies.
yeah,
For me, frankly, that wasn't really possible. I was really doing it right until I went freelancing that I can when these days very privileged to have to wake up when I want,
mhm,
and then to choose my hours, to do these things and then to smell the flowers, to pause in my life, and I started to notice a lot more things going on with my body than I ever did before. So you're right, Chris. I think something you said, like whether it's meditating or taking that time for yourself, uh, you will uncover and maybe
yeah,
fix or address certain issues a lot sooner.
yeah. Well, and it all comes back to if we don't take care of ourselves, how can we take care of others?
Yeah.
Right? Whether it's mentally or physically or whatever, right? If we don't take care of ourselves, how can we take care of other people? And
Mhm.
too often we get in that codependent mode, or we get in that mode that says, "Oh, I need to do this for other people." I know
Mhm.
business owners, right? That's
Mhm.
why I help these people is
Mhm.
because they're doing it all themselves, and they're putting this huge burden on themselves, and they don't need to, right? You
Yeah.
can help tremendous amounts of people just by giving them little tips and tricks, right? If they would just watch your videos, if they would just hire you to do some of the things that they can take that responsibility off of them. They don't
Yeah.
need to carry the weight of the world. They really don't.
Yeah.
And that's why I enjoy doing what I do, and I know you do too. But we get the opportunity to give to other people and help them,
Yeah.
right? And as I say, I contribute to other people and what they're doing, because that's really what I get to do. I get to contribute to their success.
Yeah. Absolutely. This is so wonderful, Chris. We went over time, but I encourage people to take a look. I included the description, the link. There's a link tree link that takes you to all of Chris's work and how to connect with him on social media. Check out his book. But I want to just take a moment and thank you for whatever time that you had today to spend with us live here, different social media channels, but also this episode will be repurposed for Face World Podcasts on Spotify, Google, Apple, and other major platforms as well. So leave us a comment and look forward to continuing the conversation, Chris.
Absolutely.
All
Absolutely.
right.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you having me.
Thank you so much. I'm going to take us offline.